Hey guys, just leaving the most dangerous place in our town. I mentioned to you in a previous video. It's scary, it really is. It's the local shopping centre car park, and it's the scariest place, the most dangerous place in our town for driving. It's terrible. Chaos. Anyway, that's not the topic. The topic is very delicate topic that's going to upset people for sure, but it's just something that exists in Japan. So anything and everything about Japan, this exists, and that's the coldness. Once I start to think about making a video like this, I have actually touched on this in previous videos over the years. Once you start to think about making a video like this, the examples just keep jumping in your face. And this week I was talking to another guy who's not Japanese, who was telling me about some goings on with his wife and some of the things that she'd said to him, and just really cold stuff, really cold stuff that you just wouldn't imagine saying to a partner, and I've heard a lot of those over the years. I've got another guy that I speak to sometimes who's not Japanese, who has a Japanese wife. And quite often over the years we've said to each other that I can't believe she said that. So for example, that's the guy whose wife told him once years ago that he has to be Japanese. He has to be Japanese. You live in Japan, you have to be Japanese, and stuff like that. I mean, this other guy told me recently that his wife told him that if you can't be Japanese, I'll leave you. Right? He's not Japanese. He's doing his best, and he actually does quite well in conforming to all the things that he has to conform with, and he is pretty good. But he's not Japanese, and it's just not possible. It's no more possible for him to be Japanese than it is for his wife to go and live in America and be American. It's obviously we are what we are. You can modify your behavior and control your behavior as much as possible, but it's not possible to a person who's spent the first half of their life in another country to move to another country and just be 100% like the people there. It's just not possible. Anybody who's ever lived in another country to their own will know that at heart you've got the heart of a person that was raised in another place. But the point of this video is the coldness that you get in reaction to stuff like that, and this is not as with all our videos, they're not criticisms, they're just observations, and this is just the observation of Japanese culture and Japanese life, because Japanese people are raised with this same coldness that your individual feelings are not important. The goal is conformity with everybody else, and as a result of that, your feelings or your own thoughts come second, right? And we see that with kids here all the time, that they're expected to do what everybody else is doing like a good robot, and if they don't, there's no compassion for them at all, and in any way. So that, it doesn't matter what your individual thinking or individual behavior is, you're expected to behave like everybody else. And if you don't, the result of that is ruthless, and that continues through into adulthood. An example of that is the bullying. Bullying. They talk about bullying in Japan, and that, oh yes, we're trying to reduce the bullying and stop bullying. But the reality is that the bullying is one of the things that keeps everybody conforming to how they're supposed to behave. That the teachers will know that some kid in the class is being bullied for being different or behaving different or looking different or doing something differently, but they turn a blind eye to the bullying because it's sort of forcing. It's sort of the downside of the senpai kohai thing, where people are they've always got someone above them. And that's all well and good if the person above you, who's only 6 months older or a year older, if that person's kind and compassionate, that's all very good. But often that person above you is a ruthless a-hole who straight out bullies you. you know, and that sort of bullying, and in the workplace is the same. The workplace is a classic example of it, where, you know, if someone's worked at that company for 3 months longer than you, then they're your senpai. Or if a person's 5 years older than you, they're your senpai. And if that person happens to be a psychopath, you know, 1 to 2% of humans are psychopaths. One of those people happens to be a psychopath, bad luck for you. And again, it's accepted behaviour that, you know, the yelling and shouting and all that sort of stuff that used to be acceptable in other societies 50, 60 years ago is still acceptable here. They talk about it. They know, you know, that they talk about the power hara, they call it, power hara, power harassment, and that's exactly what I just mentioned, that someone above you hassling you or something. So they talk about it, but the reality is that it's still mainstream, and they accept it because they like it, because it keeps everyone conforming. If one of the robots, you know, if one of the employees is not being a good robot, he gets bullied by the person above him. And nobody has any compassion for anybody that's in that situation, and you see that all the time. If you experience it, if you're unlucky, and you do something that's different from what everybody does, they're ruthless about it. There's no compassion for you at all, and the fact that you might be a foreigner or not is irrelevant. You know, you're a human unit behaving differently to other people, and that's not acceptable, and there's no compassion for that at all. So just cold, and this is what this video is about, is this coldness that you feel. You know, mentioned in a video a while ago about friendliness. You know, Japanese people often visit Japan for a short period of time and go home and tell you how friendly Japanese people are. They're so friendly. I would say they're not. I would say they're really polite. And that comes across as friendly because they're very convincing at being polite to people. And so that gives you this impression that they're really friendly to you. But the reality is it's not friendliness, it's politeness. And that can change. That can change really quickly. If, you know, you'll be in a group. I've got a few examples of this myself where I've been in groups. I was in a Kyudo group years ago. And I used to go to Kyudo 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and we'd go off and we'd do Taikai and spend a lot of time with these guys doing Kyudo. And they were very nice to me. They were very polite to me all the time, you know, and I felt like I was part of this group, and you sort of get to know different people in the group, and it sort of feels like you're a part of it. And then I actually stopped doing Kyudo and went back to Aikido because I enjoy that more. And then I went back and visited the Kyudo people a few weeks later after I'd left the group. And it was just cold. It was just really cold. They were sort of polite and greeted me, but much differently to what they were when I was a member of the group. And that's really common. You hear examples of that all the time. All the time. I've seen that with my wife as well. She's in some group, and then, you know, the kids get older, so she's not in that group anymore, and we'll be somewhere and she'll run into someone and say hello, and they're very, very cold. They're polite, but they're cold. They're cold because you're not connected with them anymore, right? Cold. So you see examples of this coldness all the time, you know. Probably another one that came up recently, and I've mentioned these in the past. There was a guy I used to know who had a wife and two kids, and his kids were only young, and we'd had this big discussion. Well, I've mentioned this in a video about sincerity once before. We had this big discussion once about how important family life is and how important the kids are, and nothing else is important as kids and all this sort of thing. And within weeks of that discussion, he said to me he was going to Singapore. And I said, what happened? Oh, the company offered me this job in Singapore, and it's really good for my career, so I'm going to Singapore. So he left his kids and his wife here in Japan, and he went to Singapore, and he's in Singapore 50 weeks of the year, sometimes 51 if they're busy, and he comes home 1 week a year. And a few months after that, after he left to go to Singapore, my wife ran into his wife somewhere, and his wife told him that she felt like she's a single woman now. And as she would, right? 51 weeks of the year or 50 weeks of the year, there's no husband in the house, right? He just earns his money, and the money goes in the bank account, but he's not there 50 weeks a year. So yeah, she feels like a single woman. I can tell you a million of these. There was another one that we know where the husband was actually transferred just to another city within Japan, and he used to just come home on weekends, and then he got transferred back to our town, and we're saying, oh, it's great, have him back again, and Jummer, he's Jummer, he gets in the way. And the point of this is how cold everybody is about this stuff, that when that dude got transferred to Singapore, he just went, oh, okay, and off he went. No problems leaving his two little kids. They're only little then, they're about 8 and 6, and just leaving them and his wife, and off he goes. And she was cool about it, right? Kids were probably not. Kids probably felt differently about it, but this woman and the husband, yeah, okay, because they see that as normal, right? And and then the one that the husband was transferred back to the town. She didn't want him back because he gets in the way. There's a girl we know that was a high school student. She's 18 years old, and she wanted to go to a university in Hokkaido. 18 years old. And we said to her, oh, geez, will you be sad in Hokkaido? No, I want to go. And asked her mother, how are you going to feel about her going, oh, it's good for her to go to Hokkaido. And just there's no emotion. I mean, it is true too, in fairness, that Japanese people do usually hide any negative emotions that they have. They don't want to make other people feel bad. So any negative emotions, if they were feeling a bit sad about it, they'd hide it. But there's so many examples of this. There's so many examples. There was another one I knew who actually did kyudo with in the old days, and he was the same story. He had 2 young daughters. They were like 11 or 12 or something at the time, and they transferred him to Korea, and same thing. 4 years in Korea, and he just went, oh, okay, and off he went. There was no sort of, oh yeah, it's good for the career, and they see this sort of thing as normal. When the family gets separated by a situation like that, they just accept it. I mean, there'd be some of us who have kids who there'd be no amount of money. There would be no amount of money. In fact, that's why I live as simply as I do, because that allows me to spend more time with my kids. If I took some job that was 60 hours a week and I had to go work in the big city and travel from 6 o'clock in the morning every day, I wouldn't have as much time with my young kids. And a lot of people that have kids would feel the same, that there wouldn't be any amount of money would make them leave their kids for 50 weeks of the year. But for these guys, it's really normal. It's really normal. Where's the other one? The other one was, there was this family that we knew who were actually really tight. They were really close. They seemed to be really close. And they'd actually lived in South Africa for 3 years or something. So their English was pretty good, and they'd experienced a different culture, and that experience of living together in another country for 3 years had seemed to really bond them together, right? And then recently we saw them and we're talking to them, and the guy said to me, I'm going to Brazil. And I said, excellent, great. The company's sending me to Brazil. And I said, oh, excellent, go get to visit Brazil for free, that's a great thing, And I was sort of thinking, because the company he works for has a factory in Brazil, and I was thinking, he's going there for a couple of weeks, right? So, that's excellent, that's really, really good. How long are you going to be in Brazil? 5 years. 5 years he's going to be in Brazil. His son is about 14 or almost 15, and the daughter's 13. And he's going to Brazil for 5 years, right? And I said, well, how often are you going to get home? And because when he went to South Africa, that was with the company, and he took the family, but this time he's leaving them at home. 5 years. And he can get home twice a year for a week. So again, 50 weeks a year. So that's normal for Japanese to only have 2 weeks holiday a year. Unless they go visit him, in which case he'll only be able to come home for a week, and they can go visit him in Brazil. But 50 weeks a year. I mean, those kids are going to be from 13 to 18. He's not going to be there. Because you imagine 50 weeks of the year, that family is going to develop their own system in the house, aren't they? The mother and the 2 kids. He's not going to be a part of it. So for that 2 weeks a year that he spends with them, they're just going to have their routine and have their way of doing everything, and he's not going to be a part of it, is he? He's going to be a spectator for 2 weeks of the year, right? And they're all cool with it. They're all cool. When he told me that, the wife was there, the kids were there, all cool about it. Not one of them said, oh yes, it's very sad that he's going away. Not one of them, right? And so, you know, as I said, sometimes Japanese people do hide their feelings, right? It is true. But we know all these people, right? We know all the people that I've talked to you about. We know them pretty well. And just nobody, not one of them has been like, oh, you know. And the other thing, these guys don't have to go. I mean, it is true, Japanese companies sort of say to people, you know, okay, you're going here, right? But they don't have to. They can tell the company they're not going to go and maybe keep their job. Or what some of us would do is say, I'm not going. Right, I'm not going, and you can either keep me here or fire me. It's your choice, or I'll quit. Right, which is what some of us would do. Right, there'd be no amount of money. And if there was some company I was working for and said, we'll give you $500,000 a year to go and live for 5 years in another country away from your family, no way in the world. Right, no way in the world. But these examples, I haven't finished. Right, I've got more examples. You know, I started to make a list. I was thinking of so many. It wasn't Brazil, it was Mexico. The Mexico guy, the Korean guy, the Singapore guy, right? It's really, really common. It's really, really common. And then the lack of reaction to it, you know. And it's just this is what Japanese society is like. The bonds that appear deep, you know, are just, it's sort of like logic and practicality and accepted behavior and accepted norms win out over emotion, right? And that's just the way they are. And I see it from my own wife as well, you know. I mean, she's great. She really is great. But I see it from her sometimes too. She says and does things sometimes that are amazingly cold. You know, and you can see it's a cultural thing. If the kids behave like a kid, right, instead of behaving like a good Japanese robot, she has no mercy for them. For me either. And those guys I was telling you about before that aren't Japanese and have Japanese wives, and any of you guys watching that have had Japanese partners will acknowledge this too, that often if there's a thing that where you're not behaving as you're supposed to behave, because of some feeling that you have, you'll get no sympathy or compassion or empathy at all. It's like, it's, you know, that like that woman telling that guy, if you can't be Japanese, I'll leave you, right? And he's not Japanese. So, you know, good luck with that. And of course, the other thing is that Japanese people are human beings. You know, despite the fact that the sort of society expects them to behave like robots, they are human beings and they do have feelings. Explains the 30,000 suicides a year, doesn't it? Because you imagine, you know, this sort of cold society that you live in, you know, and you don't get compassion. What you get is gambare. If people are struggling to accept any of the things that are happening around them, the thing they get is gambare, which is try hard, or do your best. It's a bit hard to translate it into English. It's got a very strong meaning in Japanese, and it just means, you know, fight on. You know, do your best, try hard, gambare, and people get pushed to their limit, and everybody around them just says gambare. And if it's obvious that, oh fuck, just lost the front camera, guys. I'll stick it back up. Here we go. Sorry about that. Scared the hell out of me. But that's all they get. That's all they get. They don't get compassion. Everybody around them, their family, their parents, their kids, their co-workers, everybody around them, if they're struggling, they'll just get gambare, right? And that's obviously when people are at the end of their rope and they just keep getting told gambare, and that's all they get told. No compassion, no sympathy, no encouragement or anything else. No wonder they kill themselves, right? 30,000 a year kill themselves. Oh yeah, I've just got a whole heap of notes. Once you start with a topic like this, it just all comes. Like the examples I've given you, for every one I give you, there's another 100 that I could give you. Kids falling, parents laughing, there's another one. You'll see kids running along in the park and they'll fall over, you know, and skin their knee or something, and they'll start crying. Parents laugh. And it's not because they find it funny that their kids hurt themselves. It's more of a, it's sort of a nervous reaction and an it's okay reaction and an image thing. There's sort of it's okay, so we'll laugh, ha ha ha, you fell over, oh ha ha ha. And it's really, as a parent, you know, I still haven't got used to that. You know, you see a kid fall and hurt themselves, and that, you know, their knees bleeding and they're crying, and the parent, and the parent goes and picks them, you know. Or worse, occasionally you get one that'll just stand there and look at them and say, come on, you're all right, you know, let's go, gambare, let's go. And as a parent, sometimes you watch that sort of coldness. It's like, oh God, you know, come on. It is terrible. That's the one that gets me. You know, everybody has their weak point. Watching adults here be cold to other adults is a bit hard to take sometimes. But watching adults being cold to kids, and see, this is where this coldness is passed down, right? Is that this behaviour of having no empathy and no sympathy and that sort of coldness, this is how it gets passed down, right? Because this is how kids are raised here, usually. Not always. And again, as with all these videos, there are exceptions. You know, there are some people here who are more compassionate to their partners than the examples I've given you, and there are people here who are more compassionate to their kids than the examples I've given you. But this stuff is so common. You guys who are watching this, who already live here or have lived here before, you know, you guys have seen this. It's so common, you know. What else have we got? Oh, Shoganai, they say. Gembare, you got something that you're really struggling with? Shoganai. And that's the end of it. What'll often happen is kids will say something to their parents that, you know, they're not happy about something, or the non-Japanese partner will say something to their Japanese partner about something they're struggling with, and they get shoganai, which is like, it can't be helped, or it is what it is, or something like that, right? And that's what you get, is the shoganai gembare. And so, like, I'm not happy because of this or that, you know, I don't like that dad's going away for 50 weeks of the year. Oh, well, shoganai, it is what it is, shoganai gembare. And that's it. There's no, let's have a talk about it and have some compassion for each other. There's none of that. This is shoganai gembare, and off they go. And the thing is, when people, and when kids and adults know that's the reaction they'll get, they don't even try and talk to people about stuff, right? It's just all internal. I've just got to keep gambaruing, and I've got to keep shoganaiing, and there's no point talking to anyone about it, because that's what they're going to say. They're going to say shoganai, don't gambare now. So, oh, pets, yeah. Some things you see with pets here. I mean, you do get things like the Fifi with the little jumpers and stuff being carried around, but you also see terrible things. You know, cats on leashes. You see that here all the time, tied to a gate or something at a house, because the house doesn't have a fence or something, and they want to keep the cat in. So they'll have the cat on a long leash and stuff like that. I mean, cats hate leashes. Dogs, Fifis, kept in houses in small cages in a corner of the lounge room, 23 hours a day. You know, you see that all the time here, all the time, and they don't have a problem with it. They don't, no compassion. See, there's that coldness again. No compassion. There's probably better words for it than cold, but this is just what you feel when you see it. How fucking cold is that? You know, that they leave that little dog in that little cage. There's one near our house that you walk past, and he's lost his mind. As you go past, he snarls and he's in this little cage at the front of the house, outside the house, in a tiny cage. You know, it's just terrible. And he snarls. He's just lost his mind. He snarls and you know, like he rip your leg off. And any wonder, I'd get like that if I was stuck in a cage all day too. Doctors, dentists, hospitals. Gambare, nothing more scary than a Japanese doctor tells you something's going to hurt and gambare, because when it comes to painkillers and pain management, their thinking is that when it comes to healthcare, that there's going to be a little bit of pain and that you're just going to have to take it. Now, exceptions to this, my dentist isn't like that, but a lot of dentists are, and a lot of doctors are here. When I was in hospital, I got a lot of this. This is going to hurt, right? In Japanese, I'll tell you, this is going to hurt. Gambare. Right? Gaman suru. Endure. Gaman. Patience and endurance, right? Gaman suru. And you go, oh shit, because this is going to really hurt, right? And they'll just do it to you, you know? So yeah, you get a lot of feeling of coldness in the medical center system here. The expectation is you're going to be having pain and discomfort, and you just have to take it. you know. So yeah, feeling of robotics. So ruthless to anyone who doesn't conform, bullying. Oh, jail. There's a classic example of the bullying. If you're not a good robot and you get sent to jail here, you know, you get bullied every day, all day by the system and by the guards and by the system enforcing you to be a good robot, you know. Terrible. Never want to go there. So anyway, coldness. Coldness in Japan, or cold Japanese people, or cold people in Japan is probably the most diplomatic way to put it. It's a lot deeper than what I'm saying, but what I'm telling you, this is what I see. This is what I experience. This is what this is what we see. And you know, the reasons for it are societal. This is not a criticism of Japanese people at all. This is an observation of Japanese society and how it behaves, you know. Anyway, that's more than enough of looking at that pink wall. More videos coming soon.